Assalamu alaikum students. I am Dr. Asma, Assistant Professor Biochemistry at Akhtar Saeed Medical and Dental College. We are going to start the new one topic that is about water, pH and buffers. You have well studied about the physiochemical chemistry and different concepts regarding cell signaling and different techniques that were associated with the cellular differentiation to study its characteristics, to isolate, to purify and to characterize the cells. Now this is a new topic in which different physiochemical concepts will work to maintain the acid-base balance, to maintain blood pH at a regulated value, that is 7.35 to 7.45, and we would study different chemistries and action mechanism of biological buffers that are working inside our body and that are ongoing different physiochemical changes to regulate the blood pH in a normal limit. In the first portion of this unit, we will study the properties, characteristics and functions of water. In the second portion of the unit, we will study different concepts associated with the pH and pH related things. In the third portion of the unit, we will study the clinical concepts regarding buffering capacity of different biological buffers working in intracellular and extracellular compartments and different clinical conditions which are associated with deranging of pH or creating acid-base disorders. So first of all, we will have a look on the topics that are included in this unit: ionization of water, weak acid and bases, pH and pH scale, concept of pH and pH related topics, determination of pH, concept of PI, isoelectric point, pKa value, dissociation constant Ka, titration curve of weak acids. Similarly, determination of pH of buffers along with Henderson-Hasselbalch equation and its applications, but its derivation is not required. Then we will study body buffer systems, in which there are three buffers mainly: bicarbonate buffer, that is the predominant buffer of extracellular fluid, then phosphate buffer, which is predominant buffer of intracellular fluid, then ammonia buffer, which will be working in close association with the renal mechanism of pH regulation, and lastly the proteins buffer system, in which we will study the buffering capacity of plasma proteins as well as hemoglobins. The recommended books for this particular unit is Chatterjee, M.A. Hashmi and Satya Narayan. First of all, we will have a brief overview why pH has to be studied, why different concepts based upon the pH changes are important in daily life or in biological phenomena. So, you all must be familiar with the ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. To synthesize the ATP, gradient or difference of hydrogen ion concentration between inner and outer mitochondrial membrane acts as a driving force to synthesize this energy currency. So this point shows the importance of studying pH and concentration of hydrogen ions. Similarly, pH changes or ultimately proton changes will affect the shape, structure, configuration and function of proteins. Along with these concepts, ionization of weak acid is also totally dependent upon the hydrogen ion concentration. One more concept I would like to add, that you should keep in mind: always the pH changes will be dependent on independently present, freely present proton, that is H+. Only freely present proton can cause the pH changes, not the undissociated acid. First of all, a very simple topic, we are going to study functions of water in living system. You might have read in your low classes what are the biological functions, what are the physiochemical properties of water. As all of you know, water is how much essential to the life. Universal solvent. Water acts as universal solvent. Why we use this term that it's a universal solvent? Because it has the ability to dissolve maximum types of solutes in it, either polar, non-polar, but only polar molecules can be easily dissolved in water. Non-polar will not be soluble in water. As you know, non-polar solutes will be dissolved in non-polar solvents like ether, like benzene, like acetone, carbon tetrachloride, chloroform, and etc. Aqueous medium, second point is aqueous medium. Water acts as good aqueous medium. It means that a lot of reactions occur in the presence of water. It's not acting as a direct reactant over here. We will study direct reactant property afterwards. So you might have seen a lot of reactions that are taking place, that are being carried out in the presence of water. So water will act as aqueous media so that the changes could easily be take place. Direct reactant. You can take the example of photosynthesis in which carbon dioxide molecule is directly reacting with water to form glucose and oxygen. So this reaction of photosynthesis can be the good example of water acting as direct reacting molecule or direct reacting species. Next is the solute transport. Obviously, it's so short that if there is no water in the living system, in the body, in the vessels, in the body, in the fluid compartments, things cannot be dissolved, they cannot be transported, they cannot be mobilized, and they will not be reached to the target tissues, and the reactions and different metabolic pathways all will be halted. Temperature regulator. Water has a very good property of temperature regulation through evaporation, through condensation. As you know, evaporation produces cooling. When you have fever, when there is high temperature, when there will be perspiration, when there will be sweating, through evaporation, cooling will be produced so that the temperature of body will be regulated. Dissolution of digestive juices having enzyme. This is another very important biological phenomena that is dependent upon the amount and presence of water, that molecules, ions, substances, compounds can easily be dissolved and transported if there is sufficient quantity of water. Obviously, if there will be dehydration, there will be less amount of water in the body. The products and the entities, the metabolites will not be soluble, they will not be dissolved, and they will not be transported as well. Lastly, the excretion of waste metabolic products. Obviously, water is essential for excretion purposes as well. If there is deficient water in the body, there will be anuria, there will be diminished amount of urine, and if there is less water for excretion, kidney cannot properly excrete the waste products from the body, so they can increase the toxic level of items in the body. If water quantity is not up to the mark, two pathologies can be arised, that are dehydration and edema. Dehydration and edema, these are totally opposite phenomena that are working anti-parallel to each other. Dehydration will be seen in case of less amount of water, in case of water deficiency, while edema will be observed when there will be more amount of water or excess water is accumulated in the tissues. Now we will be having an overlook over the structure of water. Very simple. You have studied well in detail. There are two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom, and the molecular weight is 18. Water has a bent structure and angular structure, and what is the value of angle? It's 104.5, and it is deviated from the regular tetrahedron angle, that is 109.5. And you know very well the covalent bonding is present in water molecule. Two hydrogens and one oxygen is covalently bonded to each other. This is the structure of water molecule in ice. And you know why ice floats on the surface of water? We are going to discuss in the next slide. This slide is showing the high heat capacity of water, that is 2260 joules per gram, and this table is taken from M.A. Hashmi. You have to learn only the value of water, not any other compound. Now we are going to discuss physiochemical and biological properties of water. Physiochemical properties of water. Water is polar molecule and it shows the property of diffusion and osmosis. It's very well known phenomena. If there will be no water, no diffusion will take place and osmosis will also be suffered. Water molecule will be dissociated into two oppositely charged ions, that are proton H plus positively charged and hydroxyl ion, that is OH negative ion. pH of water will be changed in the presence of acids or bases. Obviously, water pH, water is a neutral compound. Its pH is 7. If we will add acids, pH will be decreased than 7. And if we are going to add base, pH will be increased than 7. Buffers are needed to maintain the pH. This is also a new concept. You have studied about it, might be. Buffers are what? These are the compounds, these are the combination of solutions, these are the mixtures which are going to resist the pH changes, or in other words, they will maintain a balanced pH. Water heat of vaporization values 2260 joules per gram and its density is highest at 4 degrees centigrade. And density of water is considered as 1 gram per ml, and this is taken as standard to compare the other liquids. Now the another property is behavior of non-ionic, uncharged but polar molecules. Non-ionic, uncharged but polar molecule, we can give the example of sugar and soaps. Sugars and alcohols, sorry, not soaps, it's sugars and alcohol. Alcohols are partially polar because they also contain the non-polar hydrocarbon group, but so they are known as non-ionic but polar because half of the portion contains ionic group, polar group. So how they will be dissolved in water? The property is hydrogen bonding. Basically, hydrogen bonding of water is responsible for the dissolution of non-ionic, uncharged but polar molecule like sugar. Table sugar is easily dissolved in water after stirring or applying a few mild mechanical force, because the sugar molecules contains those groups which can easily make hydrogen bonds with the water. Amphipathic molecules. What are these molecules? Amphi means dual character. We will consider the example of detergents, soaps and cleaning agents in this topic, as they contains both portions, polar as well as non-polar. If we consider and if we think about a detergent molecule, its structure, the central core is non-polar hydrocarbon, while the outer coat is hydrophilic carboxylic acid, because the fatty acid contain long chain hydrocarbon and the polar head, that is carboxylic acid, which will be showing the polar character. So again there will be hydrogen bonding and there will be both types of groups which are present, non-polar as well as polar, to dissolve the polar as well as non-polar or non-polar group of stain or grease. So this is the property which can be attributed to the cleansing action of detergents, cleansing actions of soaps and dishwashing liquids, that they contain both type of groups, polar as well as non-polar. Distribution of water. Our body contains total of 42 liters water, and if we consider the percentage, it's 70% as a whole. Total percentage of water is 70%, And the biological fluids which will contain water, these are urine, it can be saliva, it can be cerebrospinal fluid, and it can be blood. So how this water is distributed in the body? An adult man will contain how much water? Out of this 70%, it's 55 to 70. Adult female or women will contain 45 to 60% water. A total quantity of water that is present in the living body is 42 liters. And if we distribute this volume in both compartments that are extracellular and intracellular, the distribution will be as follows. This 42 liter will be subdivided into two fluid compartments that are ICF, intracellular fluid, and ECF, which is extracellular fluid. Out of 42 liter water, 28 liters will be stored in ICF and 14 liter in the ECF. Out of this 14 liters, 15% will go in interstitial fluid, while 5% will go in plasma. And interstitial fluid is the fluid present in tissue spaces. And if we look at the volume, 28 liters in ICF, 14 liters in ECF. Out of this 14 liter, 10.5 liters will be present in interstitial fluid, while 3.5 liters will be present in plasma. Intracellular fluid, the fluid present in the cells, that is approximately 50%, 28 liters. As we have seen in the flow chart, the fluid present in extracellular compartment, that is outside the cell, is ECF, and its percentage is 20%, while its volume is 14 liters. Water turnover and water balance. Now, what is meant by water turnover? The amount of water in extracellular fluid and intracellular fluid will be balanced by the body, and a lot of phenomena, a lot of working agents are involved to maintain the water balance and water cycle in the body, and that will be comprising of water intake and water output. Now we discuss about exogenous as well as endogenous sources of water in the body. Exogenous source. Exogenous source comprises of both liquid water fraction as well as solid water. Solid water fraction is present in the form of solid food stuff that we are going to consume in the form of daily food. Plain water in the form of milk, plain water, milk, fruit juices, all this will be included in exogenous liquid intake. Similarly, the solid food stuff, round about 700 ml water will be produced by consuming daily routine of food. 1 gram carb will produce 0.6 ml of water. 1 gram protein will provide 0.4 ml of water. 1 gram fat will provide 1.1 ml of water. A total of 125 ml of water will be produced against each 1000 calories that will be consumed by the body daily. These all quantities are what? These are the water quantity that is being produced in the body as a result of oxidation of food stuff, as a result of metabolism. That's why this water is also known as metabolic water or endogenous water. So, endogenous water and exogenous water both will be considered in the water intake. Now, the second one point is water output. We are going to discuss various routes of water output. The major one route is urine. Maximum amount of water loss through the body is by the urine, and the total amount of water that is being lost through the urine is 1 to 2 liters in a healthy person, and the average amount is 1.5 liter or 1500 milliliter. As you know, urine production cannot be stopped at all. However, it will be variable according to the weather condition, according to the physiology, according to any pathology or water intake. There is a term that is known as minimum excretory volume, and that volume quantity is 500 ml, that is required at every cost by the body to remove the waste products from the body. So this 500 ml of water is known as minimum excretory volume. Hormonal regulation of urine. Urine production is totally controlled by the hormone that is known as vasopressin or ADH. ADH is antidiuretic hormone, and it is secreted from the posterior pituitary gland. Now, the secretion of this hormone is totally dependent upon an electrolyte, that is sodium. So, sodium will be responsible for the secretion of ADH, and ADH will ultimately control the total amount of water to be reabsorbed in the body or to be excreted from the body. So, first one stimulus for the secretion of ADH from the posterior pituitary gland will be plasma osmolality. Plasma osmolality means amount of sodium in the plasma. If there is high sodium in plasma, plasma osmolality will be high. If low sodium, plasma osmolality will be low. So high plasma osmolality will result in more secretion of ADH from the gland. And as we have discussed that ADH is associated with the reabsorption of water, so it will result in high water reabsorption from the kidney tubules and less water excretion through the urine. On the other hand, if plasma osmolality is low, means sodium is low in plasma, it will cause less secretion of ADH from the posterior pituitary gland. That will result in less water reabsorption from the kidney tubules, ultimately leading to more amount of water to be excreted through the urine. Plasma osmolality depends upon the amount of sodium, as we have discussed. There is a disease, diabetes insipidus, in which what happens, there is deficiency of ADH hormone. If there is deficiency of ADH, it will lead to less reabsorption of water in the body, leading to more excretion of water through the urine. So body will be dehydrated, and these patients will suffer frequent urination. So this was all about the first major route of water excretion from the body, that was urine. The second route is skin, and through skin daily 400 ml of water is being lost through sweating, through perspiration. And water loss through this route is totally dependent upon the climatic conditions, humidity level in the air, temperature. Obviously, if there is warm day, if there is more heat, if there is high temperature, more loss of water will be there, and vice versa. In case of fever, more water will be lost through the skin, and there is a range 15% high water excretion will be observed against each degree rise in temperature, and this phenomena will also be applied on the lungs. Third one route for water excretion from the body is lungs, and total quantity that is being excreted through lungs is 400 ml per day. 400 ml per day water is lost through the respiration by the lungs, and again same parameter will be applied over here: warm temperature, more humidity level, fever, they will cause increased water removal through the respiration. Now there is another term that is known as insensible water loss. Water loss through the skin via perspiration, and water loss through the lungs via respiration. Totally, combinedly, they generate a term known as insensible water loss, and the total amount is 850 ml, because it's not under the voluntary control. There is another term, obligatory water loss, that is occurring at every cost without any voluntary action. Like skin, water loss through the skin, that is 450 ml, water loss through the lungs 400 ml, water loss through the feces, that will be 150 ml, along with minimum excretory volume, that is 500 ml, and combinedly all these losses will generate a total volume of 15 to 1600 ml, that is known as obligatory water loss. Okay, we will be discussing the next features in the next lecture. Thank you.